He stepped out of his sleek black car, the sun glinting off its polished surface. The city buzzed around him, but he barely noticed. He was used to this life, the fast cars, the expensive suits, the constant attention. To him, the world often seemed like a stage where he played the leading role, and people either watched or stepped aside. Today, however, he was heading somewhere different, a small restaurant tucked between two tall buildings, quiet, almost hidden. It was not the kind of place where people would notice a millionaire, but curiosity had drawn him in. The door opened with a soft chime as he entered. Inside, the room was warm, the lighting soft and inviting. The smell of fresh bread and brewing coffee filled the air. Unlike the bustling restaurants he frequented, this one had a calm, almost serene atmosphere. Tables were neatly arranged, each with a small vase holding a single flower. The walls were decorated with simple paintings, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth or status. It was comforting in a way that he wasn't used to. He paused at the entrance, scanning the room. His eyes met those of a few patrons who looked up briefly before returning to their meals or conversations. There was something unusual in the air, an almost tangible quiet. He expected to be noticed, perhaps even greeted with polite curiosity. Instead, the restaurant carried on around him as if he were invisible. He felt a slight twinge of irritation, but quickly brushed it off. He was not used to being ignored, even in places that seemed humble. A young man behind the counter offered a polite nod, and a woman moved gracefully through the tables, refilling water glasses with quiet efficiency. Everyone seemed absorbed in their own world. He approached the host, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, and gave his name, expecting a prompt recognition or at least an excited mention of the reservation. The woman smiled, wrote down his name, and gestured toward a table near the window. There was no excitement, no hint of awe, only calm and professionalism. He walked to the table, adjusting his suit jacket, making sure he looked impeccable. As he sat down, he placed his leather wallet on the table, a subtle reminder of who he was. From his point of view, wealth often brought attention, respect, and influence. But here, the normal rules seemed different. Here, no one cared about the size of his bank account, the brand of his clothes, or the car he had arrived in. The idea was unsettling but strangely intriguing. The waiter arrived, a young woman with neat hair and a calm expression. She handed him a menu without a word of recognition, without a flicker of surprise. He looked at her, expecting at least some acknowledgement of his presence, but she merely waited for him to choose. He chose an expensive dish, partly out of habit, partly to see if it mattered at all. It did not. She simply nodded and walked away, placing the order with the same quiet efficiency she had shown with every other table. As he waited, he observed the other diners. Families chatted quietly, couples held hands across the tables, and friends shared meals with gentle laughter. There was no rush, no display of wealth, no showing off. The millionaire felt a strange sensation, a mix of frustration and fascination. He was used to controlling situations, bending them subtly to his will. Yet here his influence felt negligible. It was a new experience, and part of him enjoyed the challenge. He tried small talk with the waiter when she returned with his water. "Busy day?" he asked, trying to establish some connection, something he was used to creating effortlessly. She looked at him with steady eyes, considered his question, and replied in a soft, even voice, "It has been busy, yes. But everyone is doing well." No elaboration, no hint of curiosity about him, no recognition. It was a small sentence, yet it carried a weight that he wasn't expecting. He sipped his water, feeling a subtle shift inside him. He realized that no matter how much wealth or status he had, it did not automatically command respect here. The room continued in its quiet rhythm, unbroken by his presence. There was no whisper of his name, no sideways glances of envy or admiration. It was as if the restaurant existed in its own little world, separate from the one he dominated daily. The soft clinking of cutlery and low murmur of conversations filled the background. He noticed a young boy laughing at something his mother said, a man quietly reading a newspaper, a couple exchanging smiles over their meal. None of them paid attention to him. He had to admit it was refreshing. For a moment, he didn't have to be impressive, charming, or commanding. He could simply exist without expectation. It was a sensation he hadn't realized he missed. The waitress returned with his order, placing it carefully in front of him. She looked at him, not with awe, not with deference, but with quiet attention, as if she were seeing him for the first time, not as a millionaire, not as a guest, but as a person. He felt a flicker of curiosity, wondering what she thought of him. He had faced many people in power, many who tried to impress or intimidate him, but there was something different about her. She didn't flinch. She didn't bend. She simply observed and spoke with calm clarity. He took a bite of his meal, the flavors rich and comforting. It was simple, well-prepared food, nothing extravagant, but it tasted better than many luxurious meals he had eaten in exclusive restaurants. He realized that here nothing was exaggerated to impress. Everything had a purpose, a thought behind it. The realization made him pause. Wealth could buy many things, but it couldn't buy authenticity, attention to detail, or genuine calm. These were things he had long overlooked, believing money could substitute for them. Time seemed to slow in the restaurant. He observed the movements of the staff, the quiet interactions of the patrons, and felt a sense of humility creeping in. This was not a place to display wealth, and for the first time in a long while, he wasn't trying to. He simply watched, listened, and began to reflect on his own habits, his own assumptions. He realized that the world outside this restaurant often moved at his pace, demanding attention, seeking validation. But here, life had a rhythm entirely its own, indifferent to him or his status. A soft laugh from a nearby table caught his attention. He saw a young couple sharing a simple dessert, smiling at each other without any concern for appearances. He felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name, envy perhaps, or admiration, maybe even longing. It was a reminder that happiness wasn't always linked to wealth or power. It could exist quietly, in moments of genuine connection and simple pleasures. He wondered how much of his life he had missed because he was always chasing recognition and status. The waitress returned to check on him again, and this time, he decided to ask her something more personal. "Do you enjoy working here?" he inquired, genuinely curious. She smiled softly, a small knowing smile, and replied, "I do. It's quiet, and I like seeing people enjoy their time. Everyone has their own story, and I get to witness it." Her words were simple, but they carried a depth he wasn't expecting. She spoke with sincerity, not flattery, not calculation. He found himself listening intently, drawn to the calm certainty in her voice. For the first time in a long while, he realized that being powerful or rich did not make life richer. Experiences, connections, and authenticity mattered more. The idea was not new, but feeling it so clearly was. He felt a strange combination of discomfort and intrigue. He had entered the restaurant expecting to be noticed, to perhaps impress or assert his status. Instead, he found himself quietly observing, reflecting, and slowly understanding that the world didn't revolve around him here. As he finished his meal, he felt a sense of gratitude, not for luxury, but for the quiet experience, the simple interactions, and the subtle lessons. He looked around one last time, noting the soft smiles, the gentle conversations, the careful movements of the staff. It was a world apart from the one he knew, and yet it felt grounding, real, and unexpectedly important. He left the restaurant with a quiet sense of wonder, still processing the experience. The city outside was noisy, fast, and demanding as always, but inside him something had shifted. A small part of him had been humbled, another part intrigued, and a larger part curious about what lay ahead. He had walked in expecting a meal, but he had received something more valuable, a glimpse of a life lived with simplicity, authenticity, and calm observation, untouched by wealth or status. It was a beginning, and he did not yet know where it would lead. After leaving the restaurant, the millionaire couldn't stop thinking about what he had just experienced. Back in his luxury car, he stared out the window at the bustling city streets. But the usual thrill of seeing people recognize him, or cars yielding to his passage, felt strangely hollow. He had come expecting attention, maybe even admiration, but instead he had felt invisible. And yet that invisibility had been strangely refreshing. For the next few days, he found himself returning to that memory often. He walked through his grand offices, surrounded by assistants and colleagues who treated him with polite respect or sometimes fear. He noticed how empty it all felt. The deals, the contracts, the meetings, they were all part of a world that praised power and wealth but rarely acknowledged the simple, human aspects of life. He realized how accustomed he had become to being noticed only for his money, his status, or his achievements. And now he was thinking about a quiet restaurant where no one seemed to care about any of that. Curiosity tugged at him again, and a few days later he found himself walking back toward the same street. The restaurant was still there, modest, calm, and unassuming. Its small sign swung gently with the breeze, almost as if inviting him to return. He hesitated for a moment, then entered. The chime of the door felt softer this time, almost welcoming. The interior looked just the same, calm and orderly, with the same soft lighting, clean tables, and gentle atmosphere. It was comforting in its simplicity. He noticed the same patrons, the same quiet interactions. No one seemed to notice him more than anyone else. This time he didn't expect recognition. He walked straight to the host, gave his name, and was shown to a table near the corner. He sat observing quietly, feeling less pressure than before. He wanted to understand why this place made him feel different, why it made him question his usual sense of control. The waitress approached his table, as she had before. She carried herself with calm confidence, her eyes meeting his with curiosity rather than awe. He decided to try a different approach this time. Instead of asserting his wealth, he simply asked questions, trying to understand more about the restaurant, the people, and the atmosphere. She responded openly, giving small details about the food, the way the kitchen worked, and the people who came in regularly. Each answer was simple, but he could feel that each carried meaning and thoughtfulness. He began to observe her closely. She moved quietly, effortlessly attending to the tables, checking on patrons without being intrusive. He noticed her gentle way of listening when someone spoke, the patience she showed when children asked for help, and the care she took when setting dishes in front of customers. These were qualities that money could never buy, skills and habits developed from sincerity and genuine care. He felt both impressed and unsettled. In his world, respect and attention were bought, not earned. As he ate, he noticed the silence of the restaurant again. It wasn't an empty silence. It was filled with small, subtle sounds, the soft laughter of a couple across the room, the quiet conversation of a family, the clinking of cutlery. Every sound felt purposeful, every movement deliberate. He realized that life here had a rhythm, a balance that was entirely absent from his usual surroundings. The constant rush, the pressure, the need to be noticed, it all faded away here, and he wondered why he had never sought this kind of calm before. A man at the table next to him dropped a fork, and the waitress bent down calmly to pick it up without a word. She returned it with the same gentle smile, acknowledging him without drawing unnecessary attention. The millionaire noticed the difference immediately. This wasn't about impressing someone or showing superiority. It was about caring for the moment and the people in it. He realized how rare this attitude was in his life, where every interaction seemed transactional or strategic. He found himself wanting to talk, but not about business or money. He wanted to connect, to understand, to learn. He asked the waitress about her day, about the regular customers, about the kitchen. She answered with honesty, never embellishing, never pretending, simply telling him what was real. He listened intently, realizing that he was experiencing something he had long forgotten, genuine conversation. No pretense, no ego, just simple human connection. As he observed the other patrons, he noticed small moments of kindness and attention. A man helped an elderly woman adjust her chair. A child shared his dessert with a sibling. Friends laughed at each other's jokes without seeking approval. These little acts, unnoticed by the world outside, seemed powerful to him. He realized that wealth could not create these moments. They had to come from the heart, from awareness, from care. And he found himself longing for these simple connections in his own life. The waitress returned once more to refill his water, and he decided to ask her something deeper. "How do you stay so calm even when it's busy?" he asked. She looked at him thoughtfully, her eyes steady. "I focus on what matters in the moment," she said softly. "The rest can wait. People notice when you are present with them, not when you rush through life or try to impress them." Her words struck him more than he expected. It was a reminder that being present, being real, was far more important than being powerful or wealthy. He realized that he had spent years chasing attention, status, and recognition, forgetting the value of simply being present, of observing, listening, and caring. Here in this quiet restaurant, he was learning lessons that no amount of money could teach. The waitress, with her simple words and calm demeanor, was showing him a world he had long ignored, a world where kindness, attentiveness, and presence mattered more than anything else. As the meal ended, he stayed for a moment longer, watching the interactions around him. He saw children laughing, couples smiling, friends sharing quiet jokes. He noticed how everyone seemed to respect each other's space, how no one felt the need to assert power or status. It was a subtle harmony, almost imperceptible but powerful nonetheless. He realized that he had been missing this kind of harmony in his own life, always too focused on wealth and influence to notice the small, meaningful details. He left the restaurant again, walking slowly back to his car. The city seemed louder, faster, more demanding than ever. But inside him there was a small change. He was beginning to understand that true respect and genuine connection were not things that could be bought or demanded. They had to be experienced, observed, and appreciated, and he felt a quiet determination to seek more of these moments in his life, to find authenticity in a world that often valued only appearances. For the first time, he didn't feel the need to be in control, to impress, or to assert himself. He realized that some of life's most important lessons came from moments of quiet observation, from humility, and from genuine attention to others. The waitress, with her calm presence and thoughtful words, had opened a door he didn't even know existed. He didn't yet know what would come next, but he felt a growing curiosity, a desire to understand, to reflect, and perhaps to change. That night, as he lay in his luxurious bedroom, he thought about the restaurant, the patrons, and the waitress. He replayed her words, her calm demeanor, and the subtle way she had carried herself. He felt an unusual mixture of admiration, introspection, and challenge. He wondered how he could bring some of that calm and authenticity into his own life, how he could move beyond the constant need for recognition and control. And as he drifted to sleep, he realized that he was at the beginning of something new, a journey not measured by wealth, but by understanding, presence, and genuine human connection. The following day, he found himself walking down the same quiet street, drawn by curiosity he could no longer ignore. The city around him buzzed with the usual noise, honking cars, and hurried footsteps, but his mind was focused elsewhere. The small restaurant awaited, the calm refuge that had unsettled him in the best possible way. It was strange how a place so ordinary could leave such a deep impression. He pushed open the door and stepped inside, greeted by the soft chime that had begun to feel familiar, almost like an old friend. The restaurant looked just the same as the last time. Neat tables, soft lighting, the aroma of freshly baked bread filling the air. Patrons moved quietly through their meals, speaking softly, laughing in gentle tones. He felt a slight thrill of anticipation mixed with nervousness. Today he wanted more than a meal. He wanted understanding, a connection, something deeper that he could not yet name. The waitress approached as she always did, her calm eyes meeting his. She seemed to sense his presence without any surprise or judgment. This time he decided to abandon any pretense. He wanted to know who she really was. What made her see the world in such a calm, unshakable way? "You seem to know so much about the people here," he began. "How do you notice so many details without getting distracted?" She looked at him thoughtfully and replied, "I listen. I watch. I pay attention to the little things. Life moves quickly, and most people miss what is important. If you slow down, you see more than just what is on the surface." Her words were simple, yet they resonated with a depth he had not expected. He realized that he was witnessing a different kind of intelligence, one not measured by degrees, money, or success, but by understanding and perception. He ordered his meal and took a seat, observing her as she moved among the tables. She greeted each customer with warmth, but there was no flattery, no false attention. She treated everyone equally, from the elderly man eating alone to the young couple celebrating quietly at a corner table. He noticed the way her hands moved gracefully, how she remembered small preferences, how she anticipated needs before they were spoken. It was a skill he had never encountered, and he felt a mix of admiration and discomfort. Admiration because it was rare and beautiful. Discomfort because he realized no amount of money could replicate it. As he waited for his meal, he allowed himself to watch the restaurant more closely. The quiet rhythm fascinated him. No one was rushing, no one was showing off, and yet everything moved with precision. The other patrons seemed content, fully absorbed in their own experiences. He began to understand that this was what genuine attention felt like, being present in the moment without needing to dominate it. He felt a pang of realization, acknowledging how much of his life had been about control and recognition. When the waitress returned with his food, she placed it carefully in front of him. Her eyes met his again, steady and calm. He wanted to say something, but the right words were elusive. Finally, he asked, "Do you ever feel frustrated? With people, with the world, with life sometimes?" She paused, considering him, then nodded slightly. "Of course. But I try not to let it control me. I focus on what I can do, what I can see, what I can help with. Everything else is beyond my control." He felt a quiet shift inside himself. Her words were not just advice. They were a reflection of a mindset he had never adopted. He realized how often he had been frustrated, impatient, and controlling, expecting the world to bend to his will. Here was someone who faced life calmly, accepting both the good and the bad without losing balance. He wondered what it would be like to adopt even a fraction of that mindset, to approach life without constant agitation. As he ate, he noticed a man struggling to open a bottle of water at a nearby table. Without hesitation, the waitress moved to assist, opening the bottle and handing it back with a small, kind smile. The man thanked her softly, and she returned to her work as if nothing unusual had happened. The millionaire watched, struck by the quiet power of her actions. She did not seek praise or recognition. She simply acted, aware of her surroundings, noticing what others overlooked. He felt a strange mixture of admiration and unease. He had always believed that power was demonstrated through influence, wealth, or control. Yet here it was, shown through simple, unnoticed acts. She commanded respect not through status but through presence, through the way she interacted with the world. And he realized he had never been taught to see this kind of power. It was invisible, subtle, and profoundly effective. Curiosity got the better of him, and he asked, "Do you ever get tired? All this attention to detail, caring for everyone. Does it wear you down?" She shook her head slowly. "Not really. I enjoy it. Life is made up of small moments, and I like seeing those moments. When you pay attention, the world feels fuller. It is tiring if you do not find joy in it, but I do." Her calm certainty fascinated him. He realized that she found purpose in what others would consider mundane. She had discovered meaning in observation, connection, and care. Throughout the meal, he continued to observe her interactions. A young boy dropped his spoon and she picked it up, handed it back, and gave him a warm, encouraging smile. A couple was having a quiet disagreement and she approached subtly, offering assistance without intrusion. Every action was thoughtful, deliberate, and meaningful. The millionaire felt both humbled and inspired. This was a lesson he had never received in schools, boardrooms, or through wealth. Influence and power could be quiet, gentle, and still undeniable. By the time he finished his meal, he found himself longing to understand her perspective even more. He wanted to know how someone could maintain such composure, such patience, and such clarity in a world that often demanded haste, noise, and assertion. He realized he had been conditioned to equate noise with power and speed with importance. She had shown him another way, an approach rooted in observation, understanding, and empathy. As he prepared to leave, he paused to watch her return a tray to the kitchen. She moved with efficiency and care, her attention focused on the task at hand, yet fully aware of her surroundings. He felt a sudden respect, deeper than anything he had felt for a business associate, a celebrity, or even his own achievements. This was respect for presence, skill, and human insight, and he realized that he had barely touched the surface of what she represented. He left the restaurant, stepping back into the city streets with a new awareness. The noise and chaos of the world seemed sharper, faster, yet he felt equipped to observe it differently. He was learning to notice what truly mattered, to see depth where he had once seen only surface, and to respect presence where he had once demanded attention. The waitress had changed something within him, though he could not yet articulate it fully. For the first time in years, he felt a quiet humility. He understood that life was not measured solely by wealth, power, or recognition. True influence, true impact could be silent, subtle, and unassuming. And he realized that he wanted to understand more, to experience more, and perhaps even to change the way he interacted with the world. The waitress had opened a door and he was beginning to step through it, curious about what lay beyond. The next afternoon, he found himself back at the restaurant. He had come to realize that no ordinary meal could explain what he felt when he was there. He wanted to see her again, the waitress who had shifted something within him. The city around him moved with its usual hurry, but he walked with a measured pace, feeling a strange anticipation, like returning to a place where lessons were quietly waiting. He entered the restaurant, greeted by the soft chime. The familiar scent of bread and coffee welcomed him, a stark contrast to the chaos of his usual world. He noticed the patrons absorbed in their meals, the gentle laughter, the quiet conversations. Everything was the same and yet different, because he was seeing it through a new lens, one sharpened by curiosity and humility. He felt a strange mixture of calm and excitement. The waitress approached, her eyes meeting his with steady calm. Today he didn't attempt to impress her. He simply nodded, acknowledging her presence. She seemed to understand, reading the subtle change in him. Without a word, she handed him the menu and waited. He studied it briefly, then decided to trust her guidance, asking her to suggest something. She nodded and recommended a dish she said was a favorite among regulars, simple but full of flavor. While waiting, he observed her once more, noticing details he hadn't before. Her movements were fluid, almost graceful, and she seemed aware of everything happening around her without any strain. She stopped at a table where a child had spilled water, cleaned it up quietly, and smiled at the boy who beamed back. Then she walked to an elderly couple, offering a gentle word about their meal. Each act was small but carried meaning, as if every action had been thought through, intentional yet natural. He felt compelled to ask her a question he had been holding back. How do you do it? How do you notice everything, care for everyone, and still stay calm? She paused for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. I don't think about it as doing it for everyone else, she said softly. I focus on what I can see, on what is happening right now. Life is made of moments. If you are present with a moment, it takes care of itself. If you try to control everything, you miss the important parts. Her words struck him deeply. He had spent years trying to control every aspect of life, believing that power and wealth were the key to security and happiness. Yet here was someone who showed strength in presence, in calm observation, and in understanding. He realized for the first time that the very qualities he had overlooked were far more powerful than money or influence. Her simplicity was profound. She moved back to his table, placing a glass of water in front of him without a word. He looked at her and found himself asking another question, one that revealed a part of himself he rarely admitted. Do you ever judge people? When someone is rude or proud or greedy, do you think less of them? She looked at him, her gaze direct and unflinching. I notice what they do and what they say, but I try not to let it change who I am. Everyone has a story, and most people are fighting battles you can't see. I focus on understanding rather than judging. He froze for a moment, feeling the weight of her words. He had spent his life being judged by others and judging them in return, often harshly. Her perspective was something he had never encountered, an approach to life that prioritized empathy, understanding, and patience over power and wealth. He realized that her calmness was not indifference. It was strength. It was the kind of strength that could not be bought or forced. Throughout the meal, he observed her interactions with the other diners. A young couple was quietly arguing, and she approached, offering a gentle suggestion about a shared dish that helped ease the tension. A child was struggling to open a container, and she assisted without any fuss, offering encouragement rather than a reprimand. Each act, small on its own, accumulated into a pattern of care and attention that was mesmerizing. He realized that true power could be measured in subtlety, kindness, and presence rather than dominance or wealth. When he finished eating, he felt a desire to understand her even further. He wanted to know what drove her, what shaped her calm outlook in a world that often demanded haste and control. You seem to see so much, he said. How do you maintain this clarity, this calm, even when life gets complicated? She paused and smiled softly. I focus on what I can change and let go of what I cannot. I pay attention to the small things because they are what matter. The world can be overwhelming, but if you ground yourself in what is real, the rest becomes manageable. Her words resonated with him more than he expected. Presence or influence gained through understanding. Her words had revealed a reality that his usual world had hidden from him. He realized that life's most important lessons often came quietly, through observation and reflection, rather than force or assertion. That night he lay awake in his bed, thinking about the waitress, the restaurant, and the lessons she had imparted without even trying. He reflected on his own life, on the countless interactions where he had sought attention or power rather than connection and understanding. He felt a strange mix of regret and inspiration. Regret for the years he had overlooked such subtle yet profound truths, and inspiration for the possibility of change. He wanted to carry some of what he had learned into his own life, to see the world not as a series of challenges to control, but as moments to observe, understand, and appreciate. He knew the journey would not be easy. Habits built over decades could not be undone in a day, yet the encounter with the waitress had planted a seed, a new awareness that would grow with time. He understood that respect, influence, and genuine human connection were not commodities to be purchased or status to be demanded. They were cultivated through attention, empathy, and presence. And for the first time, he wanted to cultivate them. In the days that followed, he carried her words with him in the city, in meetings, and in interactions with people he had previously overlooked. He began to notice details he had ignored for years, the small struggles, the fleeting joys, the unspoken emotions around him. He realized that life was richer when observed closely, and that understanding others could provide insights that wealth never could. Her influence lingered quietly, shaping his thoughts, guiding him toward a more reflective, patient way of seeing the world. He returned to the restaurant occasionally, not out of habit, but out of a desire to continue learning, to witness the calm strength of someone who had mastered presence in a world obsessed with power. Each visit deepened his understanding, revealing new layers of insight, patience, and quiet influence. The waitress had opened a door and he had stepped through it, finding a world where words, actions, and attention carried more weight than any sum of money.
And he knew that the lessons he learned here would stay with him far longer than any business deal,
luxury, or accolade he had ever achieved. Weeks passed since his encounter with the waitress, and the millionaire found that his thoughts often returned to the quiet restaurant. Life outside continued as usual, with meetings, phone calls, and the constant hum of city activity. Yet the memory of her calm presence and thoughtful words lingered like a gentle echo, reminding him that there was a different way to experience life. He felt compelled to reflect on himself and the choices he had made. One morning, he decided to take a walk instead of driving to his office. He wanted to slow down, to observe the world around him without rushing. As he moved through the streets, he noticed things he had ignored for years. The way a street musician played with care, the smile exchanged between strangers, the soft laughter of children playing in a park. It was a quiet revelation that life was full of moments he had never truly seen. He realized that he had been living at the surface, missing the depth that existed in simple acts and interactions. He stopped briefly at a small cafe, ordering a coffee without expectation of grandeur. While waiting, he observed the barista carefully preparing drinks for each customer, noticing small details in their expressions, the careful way they handled each cup. He found himself appreciating these small efforts, understanding that they mattered in ways he had never acknowledged before. He realized that this awareness, the kind he had witnessed in the waitress, was something he could cultivate himself if he chose to. Later that day, he returned to his office and found himself interacting with colleagues differently. He listened more intently, asked thoughtful questions, and responded with genuine interest rather than defaulting to authority or status. He noticed their reactions. Some were surprised, others appreciative. It was a small shift, but it felt significant to him. He understood that true respect could not be demanded. It had to be given and earned through presence and understanding. The millionaire began keeping a small journal, writing down observations, thoughts, and moments he had previously overlooked. He recorded the kindness of strangers, the beauty of small unnoticed details, and the lessons he remembered from the waitress. Writing these down helped him internalize the changes he wanted to make, reinforcing the value of paying attention, being present, and appreciating authenticity. One evening, he returned to the restaurant, though he no longer sought answers. He simply wanted to witness, to observe, and perhaps to continue learning. The atmosphere was the same, calm and welcoming. Patrons were engaged in their own moments, yet the energy felt richer this time because he understood it differently. He noticed the waitress moving gracefully among the tables, her focus unwavering, her presence calming. She seemed to radiate a quiet strength that influenced everyone around her. He sat quietly at a table near the window, watching her. He no longer felt the need to ask questions or to impress. He wanted to absorb the lessons, to understand the rhythm of life she embodied, the simplicity of her actions, the care with which she attended to others, the attentiveness and patience she displayed. All of it left a lasting impression. He realized that her influence was subtle but transformative, teaching lessons that could not be spoken loudly or enforced through power. During his meal, he observed a moment that reminded him of the impact of presence. A young woman had come in looking anxious and distracted. The waitress approached her, quietly asking if she needed assistance, offering a calm smile. The young woman visibly relaxed, her tension easing. The millionaire felt a profound understanding. The waitress's power was not in authority or recognition, but in her ability to be fully present and attentive. He realized that this was a lesson he could apply to his own interactions. He finished his meal in thoughtful silence, reflecting on how much he had changed since his first visit. He understood that true richness came not from wealth or status, but from the ability to observe, to connect, and to understand the world around him. Life had layers he had long ignored, and the waitress had shown him a doorway to them. Her calm presence had become a mirror, reflecting his own potential for patience, empathy, and insight. As he left the restaurant, he felt a sense of gratitude, not for the meal or the place itself, but for the lessons embedded in every moment he had witnessed. The city outside was still bustling and chaotic, but he walked with a quiet confidence, carrying a new awareness of what mattered. He realized that his life could be different if he chose to continue noticing, reflecting, and connecting. Change would take time, but he was willing to begin. Over the following weeks, he made small but significant changes. He spent more time with people he had previously overlooked, listened without judgment, and appreciated the small gestures of kindness that often went unnoticed. He began volunteering occasionally, realizing the fulfillment that came from giving without expectation. He found that the simple acts of paying attention, showing empathy, and being present brought a sense of peace he had never known before. He also noticed changes in his professional life. Meetings became more productive when he listened carefully and engaged with sincerity, rather than asserting dominance. Colleagues responded positively to his shift in approach, and he realized that influence earned through understanding was more enduring than influence demanded through authority. He felt a growing satisfaction that his wealth alone had never provided. One day he returned to the restaurant once more. The familiar chime greeted him, and he entered with a sense of quiet appreciation. The waitress noticed him, smiled warmly, and went about her work. He no longer felt the need to be impressive or commanding. Instead, he observed and reflected, appreciating the calm energy of the place and the lessons it continued to offer. She approached briefly, offering him a nod of recognition, a subtle acknowledgement that spoke volumes without words. He felt a deep respect and gratitude for her, understanding that her presence had transformed his perspective in ways he could not have anticipated. As he left the restaurant that day, he looked back one last time. The waitress continued her work, moving with quiet purpose and calm authority. He realized that he had gained more than he could have imagined, a deeper understanding of life, the importance of presence, the power of empathy, and the value of observing rather than controlling. Her influence had left an imprint on him that would remain, guiding his actions and interactions long into the future. Walking through the city streets, he felt a sense of peace he had never experienced before. He understood that true wealth was not measured in money or possessions, but in the richness of attention, connection, and understanding. The lessons from the restaurant and the waitress had changed him, showing him a world that existed quietly alongside his own, a world of presence, patience, and genuine human connection. He felt ready to continue this journey, carrying the lessons forward in every encounter, every conversation, and every moment of observation. Life had opened up to him in a way that wealth never could, and he knew he would never see the world the same way again.